there, Tracy here for Trinity Stamps with another video today, and I will be showing you how to make this beautiful alcohol inked card. Alright, so here we go. What I have here is a piece of paper from Recollections, and I do have this quite a bit sped up because, well, it takes a long time, I don't know, probably took me 25-30 minutes to do this. So I'm spraying it down with alcohol, and then I'm using my alcohol ink and just laying it on there, and the colors were boysenberry and turquoise, and just kind of spreading that out with my little bellows tool, making sure that the whole page is covered. I really urge you to experiment with your alcohol inks if you haven't already, and some of the papers you have in your stash. So I used some of the Intrigue, which is kind of a pinky purple alcohol pearls here, and then you do need to use blending solution with the pearls and more ink. So I've got here the blending solution, and I've got the, oh gosh, I forget which color. I will definitely list it down below. And I'm just spreading these around and moving all the inks around until everything's covered, and I'm happy with the background. So you see in the little bottle there, I've got just plain 91% isopropyl alcohol. And then just, again, using my bellows tool to kind of spread the ink out anywhere where it's kind of gummed up, which it'll do sometimes. But so that Recollections paper was just from a, Michael's paper pad, and I just didn't love that paper. So I thought, well, let me just throw some alcohol ink on it and see what happens. And I was really happy with the result. So this is why I'm showing you how to make this really cool nighttime scene background. And a lot of times when it's still, you can't really see the shine through it. And here I'm just making sure that it's totally dry before I move on to the next step. So I use my bellows tool to kind of blow air onto it to dry it because I don't want to really use heat. And I've got a little fan brush, and I've got my alcohol, and I'm just tapping on some alcohol. And what that's going to do is leave all these little spots for you. And then next I've got my little watercolors, and this is a silver color. And it really doesn't shine that much until it's dry. And I'm using that same fan brush and just wetting it down and just tapping on. You could use a splat box if you wanted to. I didn't. I've got this little old Ranger silicone that I use. So here I have, also from Michael's, by the way, some black glitter cardstock. And what I'm trying to accomplish here is the look of everything being stars in the sky, or part of the sky. And so the nighttime sky with all of its stars is going to be the black glitter as well. And what I'm going to do is, believe it or not, you can heat emboss on this stuff. And it does have a texture to it. So I'm going to grab the stamp set, the Sketchy Nativity, and I'm going to grab the large stamp out here, and that's all I'll be using out of this set. I will be using the coordinating die set, and I'll use its coordinating die and the little star. So I'm just going to lay that out onto my paper. And I'm going to do a couple of coats of an embossing ink, and I'm going to be using silver tinsel embossing powder, because it has a sparkle to it, so you could use whatever you have. And I'll be using my embossing ink, and I'll also be using a white ink. And the reason that I use a white ink with that is because so I can actually see that the whole thing is coated, because you'll see when I stamp down this embossing ink, you cannot see it. And trust me when I say you can't see it because of all the glitter. And so I'm just going to have faith and do another coat, and then I'll do a coat of the white just to make sure that it's completely coated in ink. And notice I did not use anti-static powder on that, and that was on purpose. I didn't want to dull down any of the glitter. And of course I've done this experiment prior to this video, so I know this works. Trust me, I do a lot of mad scientist things in my craft room, and I encourage you to do the same so that you can stretch your supplies and also come up with new and creative ideas for the products you have. So I'll just give this a good press, make sure it's nice and pressed down. And I'm just using my fist. I have a rubby thingy around here somewhere, but I can't be asked to look for it. That's just me. So I'm just making sure that I can see that every part of the line work is coated, and then I'll go ahead and pull this out. I'll move that aside and clean it off camera. Grab my piece of paper and my embossing powder, and I'll just dump the embossing powder over top of it. So as you can see, even without any static powder tool, I had barely any where I don't want it. And where I did get it, I will take a little brush and just kind of brush that off. Just a little small paintbrush, anyone will do. And just kind of carefully brush that away. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And on the outside, I'm not worried about it because I'll be cutting it out with the die cut. So we'll go ahead and put away the embossing glitter, which you can see I've already got some all over my mat here. Never any fun. And I'll grab my heat tool and I will just emboss this until it is completely melted. I had a lot of fun experimenting with different types of papers that, smooth papers that I felt alcohol ink would move around nicely on. And I had a lot of fun with some holographic paper. Let me tell you, it's cool. Okay, let's pull this. Now you can see, now that it's dry, how shiny that is and how you can still see through the alcohol ink. You can see the shine. And I'm just sitting here making sure this is completely dry because now I want to trim it down to the size that I need. And I'm going to trim it to 4 by 5 1/4 ish. And what I'm doing is trying to aim to remove edges that aren't pretty, where I didn't get all the ink. And that's why I wasn't worried about it too much. But even if you were, it still looks really cool. Let's trim off that little piece right there where I didn't get any alcohol ink. And then we'll trim it to my size and just making sure that it's nice and straight. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at that. I'm just like, wow. So alcohol pearls, the reason that I use the pearls is because they are more opaque, and so they show up very nicely on black. So now I have everything cut out here, and I'm going to go ahead and put this card together. Starting with my Mary and Joseph and Jesus, and I know that I'm going to have to cut part of them off because of the size that I chose of my, my base layer. So I'm just going to add some liquid glue and glue these right down. There we go. So this card is just going to have all the sparkle and shine. I'm just going to lay something on that, something heavy, and give it a chance to dry. And what I want to do is I want to make my star here. And so I'm going to grab a piece of black paper, and I'm just going to use some embossing ink here and just kind of emboss, a chunk of this paper. So I'm just using the pad directly to the paper, getting it nice and wet, and then I'll pour the same silver tinsel embossing powder over it. And then I'll just heat emboss that whole piece and then cut the star out of it. So I'm not stamping the star at all. I just want the shape of it. And off camera, I did the sentiments as well. And I did those on the same black glitter cardstock with the same silver embossing powder. So I want to let that cool all the way, and then I'll get everything cut out. So I'm using the Elegant Christmas Sentiments and the coordinating die, the Oh Holy Night. And here I have them stamped and cut out. And I'm ready to trim this piece down. So I'm going to trim it to the same. I'm just going to kind of trim off Mary and Joseph, and then I'm going to take off about 1/8 of an inch because I want a matte layer around this. So I'm using the lines on to the left to kind of, make sure it's straight and cut it to where I want it. Let's see here. So I'm doing this to about 5 1/8. And then I'll trim another piece of the black glitter cardstock down to 4 by 5 1/4 and use that as a matte layer so that it just kind of pulls everything together. And again, just want to make sure this is nice and straight on here. So, and just kind of showing that, you know, you can actually go out to your big box store to get your papers sometimes. And I buy my black glitter cardstock. I typically buy most of my paper online, but sometimes I just feel like going shopping. Here in Huntsville, they have closed every single small business type shop, like scrapbooking store and things like that. There's nothing. There's a few yarn stores, maybe 2, you know, that carry specialty yarns and not just your average Red Heart yarn. But there is nothing for us crafters other than Michael's, Joann, and Hobby Lobby. So there I'm just kind of moving this around until I just have a really thin layer of that black glitter cardstock. And that just pulls in the black from the Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And you can still see the amazing shine on this. And honestly, cameras just don't do it justice. It is just crazy shiny. And I'm going to go ahead and use a white top folding card base for this. A lot of times you'll see me using colored card bases, and if I were to use a color, I'd probably use purple. But I think white is going to kind of bring out the line work of the Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and you know, that's the main thing I want to highlight here. So I put all these together. Now I can go ahead and put the sentiments and the star on. So I'm just auditioning where I kind of want them to go. And I decide that I want my sentiment up there in the left, and I'll put my star. Let me see, where do I want this star? I want to make sure I have room. And what's cool about these is they cut apart separately, so you can, you know, put them how you need them. Once I've decided, I'll pop the Oh Holy Night up on some foam tape, and I'm not going to make you watch that because that's pretty fiddly. And I fought with it. And then I'm just going to grab one of my foam circles here, and these are a little bit higher foam loft. And I'm just going to pop one on the back of that star, flip it over, add a little bit of liquid glue so that I can move it if I need to. And this card will be done. And it also covers that one kind of weird looking spot that I had. So remember, embellish, embellish, embellish. I'm not going to add any more embellishment to this though, because it is just shiny and sparkly all on its own. Well, I do hope that you like this video, and I hope that you learned something and go have some fun with your alcohol inks and your silhouette type stamps. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.